I'm going to tell you a little short story, kind of along the lines. When you were telling me this story, one of the things that came to my mind was there was a guy that approached me and my buddy of mine, Squid, and another one of my friends, Roger, who's deceased, has been gone for a long time. This was years and years ago. I'm talking like, I don't know, maybe mid-2000s or something. Guy approached us, and I met him through a bartender at the bar that I used to work at, and I would go in there still and frequent it. And he told us about he needed to get in touch with somebody from the military, and we knew somebody. So we connected him with this person, and we were having a business lunch with him. And the guy that my friend brought to meet him, they talked, and this individual had something that could potentially save lives in Iraq and in fact Afghanistan and whatever was going on over there. He could have helped with that, and it was very obvious, And this higher up military official told him, he says that'll never see the light of day. I mean, he's like, it's a good idea. It's great. It could, but it's not nothing's going to come of it. You can't, it's not going to work. Well, this guy got frustrated, and he said, he goes, I feel like there's dark power just literally working against me. And I told him, I said, what do you mean? He goes, because this thing could save lives, and it was just never going to see the light of day because I'm a nobody and I can't get my foot in the door, and this person told him, it's pretty much it. You're not going to be able to get the contract. It's not going to work. So I felt bad for the guy, and he told me a story. He said that when he was near a military installation, he told us specifically which one it was, but he said that he went to this military installation. He was waiting outside the perimeter of it, waiting to go in and talk to somebody who's supposed to meet with someone. And that never materialized. He said that he camped outside of this area he went to about 2 miles down the road, and he pulled over and he went to sleep. And he said he was very uncomfortable in his vehicle, so he decided to go and camp down near this creek. And so he walked down this hill, and he goes near this creek, and he says in the middle of the night, he hears this yelling and screaming and howling, very similar to what you were talking about. And he said that at one point, he heard like splashing through the water, like a person. He, like you said, he could tell it was 2 legs. This guy was an ex-military person or whatever. He was not a special forces. He was not very high up or anything like that. He was just a smart guy that had a very cool invention, and he was going to show this invention to this person, this military person that was supposed to meet him. And so anyway, he was just like a regular, he had been in the Army, and he got out and came up with an idea, a novel idea. And so he said that he got the impression in his mind that whatever this was, it was crossing the water, was evil, and that it was going to try to kill him because it didn't want what he had to be shown to whoever. And he really felt like it wanted this thing not to be. And it could be a paranoid mind. I don't know. Maybe he was just already kind of freaked out or something. But he said that he sat there on near the bank for a minute, and he heard the water, and he turned and he looked, and he didn't see it. And then he would hear. Then when he started looking over the water, he said that he would hear. As soon as he turned his head, it would take 2 steps wading across this creek. And then he was like, okay, so now I know I heard that. And he said the water was probably a little less than waist deep. From what he could estimate when he had thrown some rocks in there earlier. And he said that eventually he got up, he got spooked, and then he heard the water moving quickly. He turned around and he looked, and this thing, whatever it was, had come out of the water because it was on land. So he was running up the hill, and he fell down into like this like really tall grass. And he thought, okay, maybe I can hide from this. This thing came up because it was right behind him. It came up over the top of him, and he said he got a look at it through the moonlight, and it was like glimmering, kind of shimmery, like I'm going to talk about it when I was talking about the glimmer. I'm going to do a show about these glimmering like creatures. I don't know if it's some sort of cloaking device or whatever, like camouflage. But he saw this like he could see through it, but he could also make out the outline of it as it moved, kind of like the Predator.
Right. That's what I thought of when you were mentioning that
Yeah, he said it was like about 8 feet tall from what he could estimate. And he said as it moved off to his left, above his head, and went kind of the other direction, he got up, and as he turned and he looked, he saw what looked like the outline almost on the top of it. What would have been its head was like a wolf. And so he saw it like, and he was like thinking, man, am I just imagining this, or does this literally look like the head almost looks canine, you know? And he said that it looked like it was moving its head back and forth, and it was starting to come into focus, you know? But he did say that he saw when it started to come more into focus, it almost looked like a human's clothing, but it was very bizarre. And so he ran and he got in his SUV and he took off. And and he said that he got out of there, and he said that there was a voice in his head that was telling him, lay here, get up, move, you know, like it was telling him, like a voice inside of him. And he said that what he thought was going on was that this thing was trying to kill him for whatever reason. And he doesn't know if he just stumbled upon something, but it's close proximity to that base. What was the significance? He didn't know. And he felt like he shouldn't go into that place the next day. And so he didn't show up. And so a couple of years later is when he told us this story, and how he wanted to, make this military, this thing he had designed for the military, or he wanted the military to look at it, try to buy it. And, but nah, he didn't, he told us that story, you know, and so he said he waited a couple of years before he tried to do anything else because he was afraid. And,
wow.
Yeah.
Well, I think he did the right thing.
Yeah. And when he told us that story, it was all, we had started talking about, you know, like this different stuff that had been going on with him. And like how he, ever since that encounter, he felt like there had been something spiritual following him, messing with him, you know, and he doesn't, like I said, he doesn't know if it had something to do with, you know, with the design he had made, or maybe if it was just a coincidence, because he said it could very well just been a coincidence. And then he camped there, and then he came across these people doing whatever they were doing, and this thing was like a sentinel. And maybe they think that he saw something he shouldn't have, and that they were going after him, you know. And so it was very weird. His story was a very weird story. But now, since then, I've gotten 3 or 4 other stories about these glimmering looking creatures. You know, that's not even that unusual. I've heard several stories about that, this cloaking sort of thing that they do. And I've heard of different things coming out of that cloak too, like Bigfoot, Dogman, you know, like these almost like I don't know what you would call them, like soldier looking type people, but they look almost futuristic. I've heard all kinds of different stuff, you know, with the alien looking creatures. You know, it just,
you know, as soon as you get more research, you should do a show on that. But let me take advantage and ask you, Josh, when you say sentinel, what exactly is the definition, how you're using it?
Like a guardian.
Like
a guardian that guards their cairn. If you want to call it a cairn or a cairn or however the heck that you say the word, basically like the word that I've read, how it's used is like it's a place of power for magicians or whatever, and they'll have a guardian spirit that they put in charge of that. And very oftentimes I've heard of it as being a wolf-like creature, you know. And so it could be, I've heard of people using like a reptilian type entity, and that's what these things are. And so one of them maybe was looking for him because he was in so much close proximity to it.
Wow. You cannot really share what that device or design was, right?
You know, I don't really know what the repercussions are. I mean, what it would, I really probably shouldn't. I can tell you off the air, maybe if you want, but I probably shouldn't say it just because it might, I don't know. And then, you know, and I lost touch with the guy. The guy went off somewhere to try to get his, you know, stuff patented or whatever. I don't know whatever happened to it. Pretty sure it never did make it to the light of day, but that story, I remember him telling me and Squid and a couple of my brother and a couple other people I just, working in that bar and then doing security and just being outgoing in general and knowing I've met so many people. And I've met people through people, and just talked to so many people. And every time I meet somebody, I get a paranormal story out of them at some point. So.
Well, that's why I appreciate your show. It really encompasses different angles because there's so many things out there, and they're probably all tied together. But, most shows will only focus on one aspect. And at least here in PRT, it's open-minded enough to really look at everything, and there's probably a connection. And the more you share, the more stories you get, the better it's going to benefit all of us because we all want answers.
Yeah. Well, it's not mano paludos, but I try. So.
Yeah, no, I don't know if it exists anymore. I haven't heard it. It's been a long time.
There used to be, when I lived out in West Texas, there used to be a show that would come on. And it was a TV show, and it would come on like the public access or whatever out there. I don't know if it was something from when I was a kid, but there was this monkey, El Changuito, and it would come on there, and it was they called him Inchima, and I don't know the name, like Inchima. What I don't know where that came from, but. Yeah, and I would watch it as a little boy, and I always thought it was really, really interesting. So when I was little, I had this monkey, this not pet monkey, but they called it the pet monkey, a little Inchima doll. And it was really like a puppet, and I don't know, like, what year this was. I'm trying to think. I think it was like, I'm trying to remember the name of the show, because the monkey was called Inchima, but there was a show. And I'm trying to remember what years it was. I think I was like 7. It was like in the early 80s. I'm an old guy.
I know. Yeah. But Chema, I know short for Anselma or Anselmo, Chemo. But no, it doesn't ring a bell. But you're making me remember there was a show that popped up in the early 2000s in the local Juarez channel, Channel 5. There was this young guy kind of doing what you're doing now. But he would present on TV certain stories, but I don't know what happened to him. The show did not last, but yeah.
Because I remember the little chango, on there, and I remember the show was like the monkey had like some sort of magic power or something, and it was crazy, and so I wanted this monkey to be alive. Because I wanted a pet monkey, you know what I mean? And so I remember, this is weird. Now, I don't know. I've talked to one sister. She claims she remembers. The other one says she doesn't. But we were playing around with this thing one day, and a bunch of our cousins and stuff were there on my mom's side. And we were eating like raisins or something, and somebody tried to give this thing a raisin by putting it in its mouth. This little puppet. And everybody, like before all of our eyes, like everybody like saw it, except for like 1 or 2 people that were there. They don't really remember it the same as we do, but the rest of us do. And this thing like ate it. I mean, like it was a plastic doll. And the raisin disappeared, and there was no hole there for it to go into. And I was like, whoa, did I just see that? I was a little kid. I was a little bitty. And I remember this thing like eating the raisin or whatever. And I just remember that from that Spanish show. So then years later, the Telemundo, whatever, El Televisión, El Telemundo, the bee guy, And I remember watching.
There used to be the SIN network, Spanish International Network.
Yeah.
That's now Univision.
Yeah. Univision, yeah. And so I was sitting there watching that bee, and I just started having these like flashbacks to that little puppet thingy, and there were like 2 of them. There was like one who was a little monito. I don't remember. He was like a little dude with a guitar, and then there was like the little monkey. And I remember cutting their strings and trying to play with them because it was harder to play with them with the little marionette deal, And they were like those kind you get from Mexico, like I was down in the border somewhere like in Piedras Negras, or I don't remember exactly, like Acuña or something, but we went across and I got those 2 little toys. And then when we went back home, I was playing with it, and I always thought, man, I wish thing would come alive so I could have a real monkey. And then when it did that with the raisin, it scared me, man. And I went to throw it in the trash. And like the next day it was out of the trash, which scared the crap out of me, but it was nothing supernatural. My mom had pulled it out of the trash and was like, "Why did you throw that away?" Well, I was always pretty honest, and I told my mom, I said it ate a raisin. And she was like, I mean, you don't eat no raisin, you little pendejo, She's like, get out of my face, she told me. And I was like, it did to me like I thought it did, and so there was 2 or 3 other of my cousins that were there that saw it happen. As silly as it sounds. So we used to be able to, even in the city limits of that small town, you would burn your trash. And so we went to throw the trash out, my dad, and so I threw the puppet in there and it started burning, and my dad was like, "Why'd you throw that in there?" I was like, "I don't want it." And when we were walking back to the house, we heard like this weird noise, Now people say, "Oh, it's the plastic popping, whatever." No, dude, it sounded like a shriek. Like literally like a shriek. And and when you were talking about that shrieking and the screaming or whatever, and that kind of reminded me of that too, like like how a demonic noise is made through a human,
Yeah, because for a couple of years after that experience, I was a trucker for 2 years, and going all over the country talking to people, I ran into 2 Satanists who both gave me opposite explanations of the story. One of them said, "No, you know what? It's just people getting into a frenzy, and in that state of mind, they can do incredible things, including, making their throats produce sounds that are just unhuman." And the other guy would say, "Nope, spirits possess these people." I wouldn't know. I don't know. But I really like that in this program, we're able to hear different things. What do you think about those things I did see, the black stretchy cloth-like things flying around the fire?
What I would say, if I had to put something, it was demonic spirits. I mean, they were conjuring spirits, they were channeling spirits, and a spirit either perfectly possessed or obsessed, and then went into them and changed them or gave them the ability to change. You know what I mean? Like that's maybe what takes over. You know what I mean? When they become whatever it is they become. I know that there are werewolf and vampire cults both in this town. I know that. I've actually met a couple different people that profess to be involved with these things, and I've actually met them downtown. Yeah,
well, that answers one of my questions, that apparently, there is a network. And, as a law-abiding citizen, as a person of faith that doesn't mess with those things, it's just good to know that you're a child of God, you have a Holy Spirit shield, and in the name of Jesus, anything comes at you, there's some protection, as well as the martial arts training. I mean, what this older man told me was that the female of the cult would tear apart and eat a man. So he said I was very fortunate to come away. And, that stuck with me because, like I told you, I wonder how many of the missing people from Missing 411 and others, Unexplained, were actually victims in some kind of sacrifice. I mean, what do you think about that?
I think that there is some truth to that, like what he was saying. I mean, if he told you that, and I mean, is he's been involved in these kind of ceremonies? Did he say that?
No, not that he was involved, but that he met that gentleman with the gift, and that gentleman's mother and that man were involved in cults and sorcery type things. So when he mentioned that, I mean, I don't recall if I asked him how he knew, but all his information was based on that gentleman with the gift.
Okay, so you had a couple other stories, though, you were going to talk about from your wife's hometown, Durango?
Right, yeah. That's a part in central Mexico, and a lot of people live in ranches and small towns. But I've spoken with my sister-in-law, and she told me a story. She and her friends were coming from a party late at night, and instead of taking the bus that would take a while to go around the town, they stopped a few blocks short to walk straight to her house. And she says that, well, I gotta go back to the beginning. The backdoor neighbor of my sister-in-law happened to be a lady that even when they were growing up, she was a normal lady, very poor. She was raising some daughters, and she would sell tamales and burritos on the street. But, nothing too special about her. But it turns out that in her later years, once my sister-in-law was older, the lady changed. All of a sudden, people were coming to see her because she was doing trabajos, like kind of magical work. But it was from night to day. And the idea was that she made some kind of pact with some entity, and it gave her power of divination. And what my sister-in-law recalls literally is that, well, in this small town, everybody knew each other. And she says that there was this other neighbor whose son had emigrated to the United States, and it had been many years that she had not heard from him. So she went up to this lady who was now a local celebrity witch, and it turns out that within days of this lady speaking to the witch, that son appeared in less than a week. So whatever she did or conjured up, forced the reactions of life to make this guy come and visit home. And I mean, this is after many, many years of nothing. So that got my sister-in-law's attention. And, her fame started to spread. Well, on this particular night, she had been clubbing, and she and her friends were walking towards her own house. And like I said, this witch was a backyard neighbor. So when they're getting closer to her house, she tells me that in the alley right next to where both houses border was this big, giant bird. Now, she did not say it was a lechuza or an owl. It was just a big, tall, bony bird that was cackling and laughing. And these are her words, cackling and laughing. And they got scared and ran away. Another story is one that my wife says when she was smaller, that there was this other man in town. His name, I'm going to call him Santos. Santos, was a regular farmer type guy. And apparently one night he was walking home out in the street, and he came across a lechuza. But the funny thing is, this lechuza was talking to him, and that he started cussing at it and saying bad words and this and that. Well, this lechuza was this lady, because apparently he pulled out a revolver and he said, "I'm going to kill you." And then that the bird, the owl said, "No me mates, Santos, no me mates, no me dispares." Well, he shot anyway. Well, turns out that the next morning, the lady had a wound on her leg. And, I asked her, well, what happened after that? Well, nothing. But, that's one of those stories, and she's very straight up, my wife is. So, when I hear stories like that, the shape-shifting thing has to be related to magic of some kind.
Absolutely. That's a very common theme too. Like people will have the house that Gary Lopez is Scorpion, a good friend of mine. The house that Gary grew up in, the kids in his neighborhood had told him when they first moved in over there that there was a lechuza, like a bird that had been caught that was evil, and it was hung in the back fence. And the next day it was a witch. And so that when he first moved in over there as a little kid, the neighborhood kids told him that story and told him that was a true story. And he said it scared him. But that's a very common story. I know my old co-host Sal if anybody remembers him telling the story about I think it was his great uncle who had caught the lechuza, and what would like I can't remember exactly what he did with it. He kept it, like he tied it up or something, and he used it with the knots on the rope. I don't know if you remember that. He did the 12 Truce of the World prayer, if you remember that.
Because I do want to put a disclaimer out there, Josh. While we're talking about this subject, you know, as a wilderness person, I do respect animals, and I know lechuzas are given a bad rep, especially the barn owl, you know, the heart-shaped owl.
Yeah.
When I go train at night, sometimes I'm running or skipping rope here by a local high school. There's a bunch of little lechuzas, but I mean, they're beautiful animals. They keep the rodent population down. They're very good for the ecology and the environment. But yeah, I think it's sad when people, through ignorance, kill a lot of these birds and blame them for witches. But to know the truth, you have to either hear them talk in Spanish or English. Otherwise, I think it's just a poor animal.
Oh, yeah. Do you remember that story? Did you? I mean, being a listener of the show.
No, I'm trying to recall it. That particular one with Sal, I don't remember it.
Las 12 verdades del mundo. You know what I'm talking about, right?
12 verdades.
Yeah, the 12 truths prayer. Do you know that?
I know. You know what? I'm not familiar with that one.
Yeah, it's called Las 12 verdades del mundo. For anybody who doesn't know exactly what that is. And it's the 12 Truce prayer. And I remember in that, I don't remember exactly in the episode, but we were talking about it. And so I did some research on it and looked it up or whatever. But it's something that you do to protect you from these evil creatures. And so either his uncle or his great uncle had caught this thing. And he had to say the prayer, and each day he would pull a knot out of the rope or whatever, and say the part of the prayer, the 12 truths, and it would writhe in agony, this bird, and eventually he freed it and made it promise before God that it would not do this magic and be this evil creature anymore, and it had to promise it for its own life. And so, and so this bird, I guess it had flown over his uncle or his great uncle, whichever, and he managed to hit it with a rock or something and floored it, and it turned out to be a woman, like a harpy-looking female witch. That was, you know, but that was a crazy story that he told, and so I just remember the story, and then of course he had to speak the prayer of the 12 truths, and eventually that's how it all came out. There's a lot of legends and things that go back, especially in Mexico, where there's so many of these stories that have their roots, you know, deep in Mexico, but the Mexican people bring it with them wherever they go. And they're very unique to Mexican culture. Now, there are some that are Latino in nature, as in they can be Cuban, they can be El Salvadorian, they can be Chilean, they can be Mexican, they can be all, because they're all from a Spanish base or whatever. But then there's a lot of them, though, like La Llorona. And that one is in particular like very Mexican. It's not from the other Latino cultures. And the La Llorona is very Mexican tradition, and it comes from the siege of Tenochtitlan. I really believe
that's a classic.
Yeah, because as Tenochtitlan, when the Spanish were conquered, an old woman was heard wailing, my children, we are lost," and I believe that it's something that's been ingrained in the Mexican soul, and I believe that it only affects Mexicans. Like if there's a black person or a white person, and there's a group of Mexicans, like I can attest to this. Like I talked to a guy recently who. There was a group of them at the Cannibal River, and they were riding the tubes, whatever. And they had two black guys and a white couple that were with them, and there were like 7-8 Mexicanos. They were all Mexican, and a couple of them were Tejano, but the others were straight Mexicano, and They basically were telling me that all of the Mexicans saw and heard La Llorona, but the black guys and the white people did not. They didn't see it or hear it, and they were right there, and they were like, "What are you seeing?" And they couldn't even. One of the women, the white couple, the white female heard like a crying, but the other dudes didn't hear anything. They just heard like water splashing, which is weird. But I've heard this before, like it's something that's like a sangre curse or something. You know what I mean? Like it's in your blood. You know, it's like it's something in your maybe in your brain or your blood. The sesos, the sangre. I don't know what it would be in, but in your corazón. I don't know. It's something that's in us that
that's worthy of experiments in perception.
Yeah,
because more than in the blood, maybe just growing up with certain belief systems make you more
susceptible
open to something, I think.
Mm-hmm. Susceptibility. I honestly think that La Llorona is a tulpa. It's like a tulpic spirit that was created out of that chaos that went on at the siege of Tenochtitlan, and at the end when the Aztecs knew that it was over. And I don't necessarily say that the Aztec Empire falling was a bad thing. I mean, because they did commit human sacrifice on a scale that's never before been seen. It's never been seen before or since. It was unreal how many people they would kill on a daily basis just so the sun would rise. But it was very it was at the end, when it was over, and the siege was ending. The Spaniards and the Tlaxcalans and their other allies eventually prevailed, and the Aztecs were overthrown. And of course the river, the lake, was where the woman supposedly she was heard wailing, and then some of the stories were that she jumped into the water. Something happened that day and created some sort of tulpa out of that misery and failure and defeat and the subjugation that took place, as subsequently. So you look at it from like the raza, like it's it encompasses the whole race of the Mexican people, that it's really something. Yeah, something that's ingrained in the Mexican people, whether Indios, mestizos, or Spaniards, it's just there, and it's always there. And if you're around water, certain types of water, and the number of stories that I've gotten about the La Llorona, and the number of people who've talked about hearing it and seeing it, it makes you think that it's something that is very Mexican. I'll give you another example, Arturo. A friend of mine who's Cuban, his wife is Mexican. She's from Mexico, and he was born in Cuba, but he's very Americanized, and he's been here for a long time. He came over here when he was like 6. His family escaped the horrors of communism, and they ended up over here. And so, one of the things that he said, that him and his wife had an experience with La Llorona. She saw it. Her sister and her tío saw it. Her uncle. They all saw it, but he didn't. Like, he did not see it. Like, he was there. He heard something, but he didn't see it. So it makes you wonder, like, why is it that the Mexicanos, can see it, but the other Latinos, and the Huelillos and the black people, how come they don't see it? But it's something that Mexicans see. I've only heard once or twice of non-Mexican persons or people having encounters with this entity. So that's food for thought. I mean, I don't know why that is. But the Lechuza is a little different. Like, I got a first cousin on my dad's side who's straight up, he's a white guy, and he saw Lechuza with 2 other Mexican guys that we grew up with. I mean, that he knows very well, and that he grew up with or whatever, and they saw it with him. That's very common. Like, you'll hear about people who are non-Mexican, they will see or hear the Lechuza, but not necessarily La Llorona. It's almost like that's something that's strictly in the Mexican mind or whatever.
Right. Wow. The thought came to me as you were describing that ancient civilization of human sacrifice and the deities they have, but all around the globe, makes you wonder if those deities were really demons that showed up, or just people needed to create a godlike figure. Because you're right, Aztecs would sacrifice humans for these deities, but other places around the world, from Babylon and Sumeria and all these other places, also had, look at the Egyptians with Anubis and the crocodile-headed creatures and alligator ones, crocodile ones, and the birds that crow. I mean, makes you think. But see, this is why this topic is so deep.
Well, I think that Huitzilopochtli was the god that they had to sacrifice for. I mean, he was basically like the deity of the sun and human sacrifice and war. That's what he did. He presided over those things, and the focal point of their civilization was war conquest. They were taking over all of the neighboring tribes. The reason that it was easy for the Spaniards to overthrow them was not easy, but like the way it went down, the reason that they were able to do it and do it easier than you would think was just because the other Indians were sick of their crap. They wanted them gone because they were not happy. They were being wiped out. The Tabascans, the Tlaxcalans. There were many other Indian Native American tribes in Mexico who were obliterated that we have no record of. We don't even know anything about them because they were either absorbed into the Aztec Empire or they were wiped out. We know of some of them, like the Mixtecs and the Zapotecs and whatever, and they eventually submitted to the Aztecs and became a part of their kind of like their vassal states. There were 5 in particular. A confederation that kind of made up the Aztec Empire, but they were not necessarily the Aztec people themselves, kind of like how Russia had control of the Soviet Union, but Ukraine, Belarus, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, they were not Russian. I mean, you really couldn't tell them apart if you put one next to the other. The nationality, they were not Russian, but it became they became Russia. Like the USSR was basically Russia. Although all those countries were in the sphere of influence of the USSR. And then, of course, all these other countries that fell under communism, like Czechoslovakia, which is really the Czech Republic, and Slovakia, now 2 different countries, but then they were one country and they fell under the influence along with Poland, East Germany, Bulgaria, Hungary, Serbia. So they all fell under that sphere of influence. Romania, it was under the Iron Curtain. But they all made up the vassal states of the USSR. And, of course, I just named the other countries that were part of the USSR. Now, when the Aztecs took over, just real quick history lesson, they began by defeating the neighboring tribes. They came from the north. And the other tribes, the only thing they knew, the Tlaxcalans told Cortez and his people that the Aztecs came from somewhere in the north. I have a theory about it. I believe that they came from as far north as Wisconsin. And I believe that wherever you see where the corn... If you follow the corn all the way down from the north, all the way down into Texas, all the way down into Mexico, you also will find the Dogman, because they had a deity that was also a ferocious, evil deity. He was a dog-headed. I'm
trying to recall the name because it's not Xochipilli, but it's got a weird name.
Yeah, he's got a weird name. Dog. I'm going to try and get it here. Anyways, there was a dog-headed. Me and Linda Godfrey, when we did the show together, we talked about this, the Aztec connection or whatever. And it's interesting that we get on the whole subject of that. We went down the rabbit hole with this one. But I'll tell you that the Aztec deity, there's a dog-headed. Let me make sure, because I think I know how to say it, but I'm not 100%. Because I don't know Nahuatl. like
Nahuatl, yeah.
Nahuatl, whatever. I can't say it. Like, and this is of the Aztecs. So, Xolotl, that's how you would say it.
Xolotl, yeah, that's right. It starts with an X.
X, yes. Xolotl was like a werewolf god that they worshipped. And now, basically he was like a skeleton, like a monster, and his feet were backwards, and he served as a companion to the Aztecs in the afterlife. And so, yeah, so that was very. And there's a type of dog like Xolotl Queedle or something like that that they actually are a Mexican breed of dog. I don't know exactly what it Zolo.
Yeah, I know which one you're talking about. In fact, there's a soccer team in Tijuana, and that's their name.
Oh yeah, okay, all right. Yeah, and so that particular breed of dog is Zolo Quail, whatever it's called. But they're known to have been a breed since the Aztecs, and so, but they had a god, Xolotl, that was a companion, and he was a guardian of the. If I remember correctly, he's a guardian of the afterlife, and like he guarded the dead or whatever. And he had a lot to do because the Aztecs were doing a lot of killing, so he was busy doing a lot of guarding, and so. Huitzilopochtli was their main. He wasn't their main deity. They served Quetzalcoatl. They wanted him to return. That was their main goal, was to have him return or whatever. But Huitzilopochtli was definitely the one that they were doing all the sacrificing to. And I believe that there is a very similar aspect to a lot of these deities, like Moloch. If you look at the ancient gods, Marduk, all those from the Assyrians, the Babylonians, the Mesopotamians, the Hittites, the Persians, Remphan, it says in the book of Timothy, it talks about Remphan, and basically that being the temple of Remphan, that the Israelites were getting in trouble because they were serving him, which is another name for Moloch, and the names just continue to change. But yeah, you're talking about the same deities, Baphomet, which is the goat-headed deity,
right?
Yeah, and it's funny because the similarities between him and Moloch being the ancient Babylonian god that demanded human and child sacrifice, which was so that was Moloch, and they look very similar. I think they're just different incarnations of the same gods, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yep. That's amazing. I mean, your history and connecting all the dots between different civilizations. I just wonder if they really are demons or just conjured up ideas. But getting back to the shape-shifting, though, I mean, every culture has it. Don't you agree?
Well, if you looked at this, here's one I was going to tell you. Like, we're talking about the gods, right? The shape-shifting and all that. It's a way to perform cannibalism. Okay, which has been a tenet of a lot of these demonic, satanic, whatever initiates and things that they do. A lot of it they do things like that. I've talked to people who've been a part of these things. Not friends with them, but they've told me,
Ooh, share.
Well, there's a word called Canaan. Okay, that's the land that the Israelites were sent into by God to take over, and they were to destroy the inhabitants because a lot of them were evil. I believe that a lot of them were remnants of the Nephilim. They were giants. It talks about them being giants, and Joshua, and Caleb, and they had to destroy them. And these giants they worshipped a god called Baal. Okay, Baal was basically the precursor to Moloch. Moloch was the precursor to Marduk. Marduk was the precursor to Remphan. Remphan was the precursor to Baphomet. It all goes in line, and it goes with each civilization. The Sumerians, then the Mesopotamians, then the Hittites, and then the Assyrians, and then the Babylonians, and then the Persians, and then it just goes on and on and on. So the last captivity of the Israelites was in Persia, and Cyrus the Great released them. They took a lot of what they learned in Persia back to Israel and changed a lot of things. A lot of people believe that the story of Noah is based on the Epic of Gilgamesh, and it's just another name because there is a very similar story about a hero who gets on a boat and does this just like Noah, but it's a Persian story. So, anyways, it goes back to Canaan, and then the word. If you take the word Canaan, it's Canaan, like Canaan, whatever, and the word Baal. If you put those two words together, what do you have, Arturo?
Cannonball?
Cannonball. Cannibal. Cannibal.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you take Canaan, cannibal, and so what is a cannibal? A cannibal is somebody who eats his own kind. So humans eating humans. Like when the guy told you that she would feast on your body, it's Canaan. It's cannibalism. It's a very uncomfortable subject for a lot of people, I'm sure. But the bottom line is you probably were spared that night by an angel of God.
Yeah,
That's all I can tell you.
I do feel that way. Yep.
You look at cannibalism and where it originated from and how it's still being practiced to this day, whether through blood drinking, as the vampire cults do, or a wolf cult that would kill and devour you. Yeah, and I do believe that they shapeshift. I really do. There's a lot of people who have told me a lot of stories of things that they've seen. And I do have some shapeshifter stories, and I think maybe people feel a little bit more open telling me and giving me their stories because of the other people out there. They won't even touch the subject. They won't go into the subject of shapeshifting and things like that because they want to believe, like I think naively, that everything is just one way. And I don't agree with that. I don't think that Dogman is strictly just a physical flesh and blood creature and it's just running around out there all the time the way it is. I did at one time, especially going back to the Hernandez Ranch episodes on Vic's show. And I started to realize now with some of the information that's come to light that it is not necessarily that way. There is a little more going on than we could possibly understand. And it's, gosh, it's going to be interesting once I wrap it all up and get it going and we release that, because I think that there's a lot of information that needs to be shared with everyone. As far as what you saw, I can't say 100%. I don't know exactly who it was or what it was. And if I did, I wouldn't really feel comfortable talking, because people like that are dangerous.
And part of the reason I wanted to go out with my name, our audience is more open-minded than regular folk. But like you said, even within this group, there's some people that won't touch this particular, queasy subject. But the idea is to share and learn. So, I really appreciate you telling us all this insight. It's really wonderful.
Yeah, and I appreciate you coming on and talking about it too. One of the things I was going to tell you though, going into the future, just stay prayed up, and always be on your guard and realize what you're dealing with. Folks out there listening at home, this is probably one of the most important shows I think I've done since we've been talking about this, because I'm going to tell you something that has a message, and I'll tell you why. It is because somebody came across something that could have killed him. But, I think you were spared, and I think that it's important that you come out and talk about it and we talk about it. And I believe that in the power of prayer, and I believe that God protects his own. And those kind of people can do a lot of things that'll make people go, wow. But at the end of the day, those kind of things, the way that they can do and what they can do, you're paying a heavy price.
Right.
And the price is just too much. I mean, it exacts a heavy price for that kind of power or whatever. And it's really not enough power it's a sucker's deal. I've been presented with sucker's deals many times, and at my most desperate, I'm like, nope, I'll fall on my knees and walk as a beggar in the street. I'll always, believe in God and follow Christ. There's nothing you can do. You can put a gun to my head. You can do whatever you want. It doesn't matter. Nothing is going to change my faith. I'm not going to deny God. I'm not going to deny Christ. It's never going to happen. So I walk comfortably in my life, my day-to-day life, knowing that, that's my insurance policy. Even if you kill me, I'm still gonna win. I'm fine. I'm not going to be worried. And some people can't go to sleep at night and hoping that they don't die.
On that note, I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt, but on that note, and taking advantage that a lot of people are listening, and maybe that 25-year-old guy that was driving the white truck, if he is listening, I just want to tell you, brother, if you put your life in Christ, you're going to come away with a better deal. And I want to thank you for warning me that night. In case you're listening, I'm talking directly to you, and I want to thank you. And I want to thank you, Josh.
Well, my brother, I don't know if you know his story, but he was a Satanist. And he converted. He converted to Christianity. He left the life behind, and he realized that 20 years or 15 years, I guess, serving the devil didn't do anything for him. I mean, he had nothing to show for it. He was, destitute, and he had drug problems and all kinds of other things, and he's been delivered. He doesn't do those things anymore. He's been clean for years, and he stays on the straight and narrow and does what he's supposed to do and lives his life as a law-abiding citizen, upstanding citizen. And that's important that he turned himself around, because he could have ended up dying and going to hell. And I'm glad that he didn't. I stayed working on him and finally got him, to come to the realization. Like, I was like, one day I told him, I said, what has this evil done for you? It doesn't do anything for you. It makes you old. That's it. It does nothing for you. I mean, in the end, even the greatest prize it could offer, if it gave you the entire world, what is that to losing your soul for all eternity? I mean, there's no comparison. And there's so many people out there who won't believe that, and they won't believe it. They won't get it. But I've seen the spirit world firsthand over and over and over and over and over again. And I know what I'm talking about. And I know that is the absolute truth. There is no other way. I mean, you can go here and go there and whatever and pull and twist and turn, but it doesn't change facts. And that's the facts. In the end, we're all going to learn the truth. We're all going to know who God is, and we're going to all be judged and based on what we've done or haven't done, and I think that I do believe in karma. I believe that there's justice in karma. And I believe that some of us pay it here, and then the rest of us have to pay it on the other side. Either way, you're going to pay. I mean, there's no getting out of it. Any power you get is going to come with a heavy price. And those people that are doing those kinds of things and serving those false gods, they paid a huge price. And I'll say this, the Aztec Empire paid a heavy price. I mean, they absolutely did. There's a lot of Mexicanos and even Latinos in general that would celebrate the Aztecs, and being a history major, I learned a lot about the Aztecs. I read a ton about them. Everything I could find, I read about those people. Fascinated with their fascination with life and death and how they lived their lives. And I read about the Mayans, the Incans, all these different ancient cultures and civilizations. I studied it all. Every book I could get my hands on as a kid, I was reading, from an early age. The library was one of my favorite places. And I learned a lot about the Aztecs, and I learned that even as Mexican people, it's not really something to look back on and be like, oh, this is a source of pride, because it wasn't something to be prideful about. It was Aztlan was a horror. It was a horror show. They would commit so much human sacrifice that the entire month of October, they couldn't even drink the water out of their own lake. They had to go and get water from a neighboring lake just because they would pollute the water with blood. So if you look at a culture who serves the god of death so faithfully the way they did, and now you look at like there's entire cults now that have built up around it, like, Santa Muerta, they worship the saint of death. And it seems to be a throwback of the Aztec. I think we'll always be as a Mexican people, we'll always have that in us to be good or bad, like most races, all people, all religions. But in the Mexican people, there's like a struggle within. There's two wolves fighting all the time. In particular in the mestizo, because you have a Spaniard and you have an Indios that were never really supposed to be around each other, and they ended up becoming one. And then you look at you look at the Mexican culture, and you think that some of these stuff is like it's like the curse, it's like a curse in the blood, like La Llorona, the woman that wailed. And then the story of the La Llorona, just so everybody knows quickly here, was a woman who wanted this man. She went out with him, and she started dating him, whatever. And he told her, I don't want kids. So she had 2 kids or 3 kids, whatever. And he told her, well, I don't want to have kids, and I'm sorry. So he left her. And so in order to get him back, she went crazy. She went and she drowned her kids in the river. And so that's the story, right? I mean, and so he told her, though, after she did all that, he goes, no, I don't want you, you where are your kids? Did you kill them? And she admitted, she says, yeah, I did. I killed them for you. And so he was like disgusted by her. So she went and she threw herself in the river and drowned. So that's one version. There's another version that he killed her, or that she was taken to the magistrate and hung. But either way, she was sentenced to roam the earth to find her children. And until she found them, she was going to be wandering the earth. But I really believe that La Llorona comes from the original, like from the night of the Wailing Woman, and when the walls of Tenochtitlan were beset, and the Spaniards conquered, and I believe that the final battle, they heard the woman yelling and wailing, and the legend is that she drowned herself in the water. Now it's weird that that's an eerie parallel. And then the Mexican people would see her, and so they came up with a neat story that there was a woman that lost her kids. That's why she went around saying, my children, my children, my kids, my kids. But it was the same that the story was told, that there was a woman that wailed all night. All is lost, my children, all is lost. But the story now is that, I've lost my children, I've lost my children.
That's an excellent analysis, and I agree with it. It's very, very true. Hey, I have a question, and you've already answered a bunch of them. But when I was telling you about what I heard in the funeral home coming from a corner in the ceiling, the crying, the moaning, the pain. I mean, people go to funeral homes to cry over loved ones. Do you think it was just an echo or something else?
That's a tough one. I mean, I don't know. That question, I just, what do you feel it was?
Well, I mean, from what I've read, they say that things get trapped, especially in a corner like that, where every day, in and out, people cry, and somehow the wall absorbs, I don't want to say energy, because I think that word is misused a lot, but maybe the echo, when it's really dark at night, it comes out. And that's what I think it was. I mean, it was real. The moaning, the pain, the crying, the sobbing, I heard it clearly, but it was coming from the corner. Just weird.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't tell you. I mean, I'd have to have a lot more information, like what it could have been, like what could have caused it. I have no idea. Blood and emotions saturate the environment. I know that, and they can cause a residual haunting.
Right, like I've heard prison stories where, in certain rooms there was a black presence driving people wild.
Yeah. Did you listen to our show about the paranormal prison stories?
Oh, yeah. I enjoyed it very much.
Yeah.
I'm telling you.
We talked about those.
Show.
And I can't tell you what it was that I can't I can speculate. I mean, I guess I could say that it was something that either a spirit that was trapped there, or it chose to dwell there, or it was a residual haunting. I mean, I have no idea.
Well, Josh, I really appreciate you having me on and helping me understand what I went through. I feel much better. And, you did answer a lot of questions. I really appreciate that. And once again, by sharing this out there, it might help others understand their surroundings or just avoid certain dangerous situations.
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes don't be too curious. Things are what they are, and you just have to be careful and not get too close sometimes.
Right, like I told you, I like adventure, but I'm not stupid, and I turned around.
Well, next time, bring your kids.
I mean, what was up with that? So that made me think that the lady was in on it.
Uh-huh.
I mean, remember I told you I felt I was being buttered up, and she was way too nice?
Yeah.
I mean, who would say something like that?
Yeah.
Like, geez, come on. My kids, no way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Arturo, it's been Arturo. Arturo,
Yeah.
however you want to say it. It's been real, and I really enjoyed talking to you. Thank you for coming on the show and telling your story. So all of you out there listening, from whatever spaceship you're piloting that you've hijacked from the from the Pleiades, whatever storybook creature that's come to life and is chasing you around your house, good night.